What's up, everybody? Guess what? You found a penny for your thoughts. I'm Steve Hayes.
And I'm Nena McCaffrey.
And this is a penny for your thoughts. What's going on, Nena?
Just trying to push through one day at a time, be patient out here. Things are not back to normal at all. So,
Yeah. And man, there's just so much crazy stuff going on in our world. And we just decided that we want to be a part of the solution, not a part of the problem. So, we want to talk about some things to help us during this time of anxiety, of anger, of discouragement, so what do you have for us today, Nena? What do we want to talk about at this episode? What happy hack do you have for us?
So this is something that our last recording that we did last week, we kind of talked about this at the end, kind of left off on this thought that we want to continue talking about today. And show and tell. So basically what that means is when we're starting to feel anxious or stressed, fearful, depressed, when we start to see those signs in our lives, we don't want to hold all that in and wait to tell somebody. But as soon as we start feeling off in any one of those areas, we want to show and tell. We want to say, hey, I need to talk. Find somebody that you trust. Tell them how you're feeling, and ask for some advice. How do they see it?
And would you say sometimes just talking about it also helps?
Well, yeah, because then you're not struggling with this alone. You're not trying to solve it on your own.
Right.
You have some support. You have somebody else in your life, who can speak, like you said, speak.
So you don't necessarily have to find a clinical psychologist. You don't have to find an expert in the area of anxiety. Just you talking about it with someone you can trust. Sometimes that's really what you need. You need to get it off your chest, out of your head, right?
Yeah. I mean, unless you feel like you need some professional help, then definitely.
Well, yeah, you definitely should get that, right? But you can't always wait until your next appointment, with your, if you're seeing a psychiatrist or a psychologist or an expert in the area, but what you talked about a little bit last week, and last week, remember, we talked about you got to see it and you got to stop it. You just got to say stop to yourself, say it out loud. And then you got to say the opposite. See it, stop it, say the opposite. But what happens when you do, so show and tell, when signs start to show of anxiety, when the signs start to show, not when the anxiety starts to show necessarily. If we wait until we have an all-out attack or whatever, then it's probably, we shouldn't wait that long, right?
Yeah, that's
when
right.
Signs start to show, you got to find somebody to tell, right? So just why is that important? Like, it's not even necessarily that the person has to have any advice or professional advice for you, but wouldn't you say you said just getting off your chest helps. So what happens, Nena, when you just speak it, when you just tell somebody, I'm struggling, here's how I'm feeling, I'm really anxious, I'm really nervous, I'm really afraid of whatever. Does something happen when you say that?
Well, I know for me, a lot of times when I am struggling with anxiety, what makes it worse is when I don't tell anybody, because I think anxiety feeds off of kind of being a secret and being something that you're ashamed of. It feeds off of that, and that's how anxiety and fear grow. And so for me, a big way to combat that anxiety and to keep it from overtaking my life is I have to voice it, I have to make it known, so it's no longer a hidden thing. And when I can speak up and share with somebody, this is how I'm feeling, this is what I'm struggling with, this is what I'm afraid of right now, then it really takes a lot of the fear away and takes a lot of the fear out. And
so talking about it,
it brings
rid of some of the fear, because that seems opposite to a lot of people's thinking. But you talk about it, you said it actually kind of makes your fear go away.
Yeah, because anxiety and all of those other emotions that come with it, it's kind of it's a dark thing, and
sure.
And when you can say it out loud, you take away a lot of the shame that's associated with it, and
a lot of the power associated with it.
Yeah, a lot of the power, and you're able to shine light. This thing that's in the dark, when you share it with somebody, you're able to bring it out of the dark and into the light, and it's at that point it's lost a lot of its power over you.
Yeah. Like when you walk into a room, you don't just start yelling at the darkness. You know, you just turn on a light and the darkness goes away. So what I hear you saying is when you start to talk about it, you're shedding light on it. Otherwise, it's just the two of you in your head. It's you having a conversation, having a friendly little get together with this fear, this anxiety, and it's just the two of you. And that sucker in that situation, in my opinion, is going to win out. But when you bring a third party into it, now it's two against one kind of, right?
Exactly. And I know for myself, a lot of times I won't speak up right away about how I'm feeling because I try to solve the problem on my own, or I try to process it on my own, or find the answers on my own. And I know for me, a lot of that is my personality. I like to tackle things. I'm a go-getter, and I want to try and solve the problem.
Sure.
But I'm learning that it's never really a good idea for me to try and fix this on my own, because then the anxiety just grows. I become more stressed, and I get stuck inside my head. I get lost in my head and in my emotions. So, just like last week we talked about, when you have these feelings or these negative thoughts coming into your mind,
right?
When you practice it enough times, you're going to notice it sooner. Okay, that's a negative thought, or okay, this is an anxious feeling, and you're able to kind of nip it in the bud sooner. So for me, I'm having to practice, okay, when I start to feel off a little bit, don't try and stay in my head and try and figure it out. I got to voice it. And most of the time that's to my husband. And I just say, what, I need to talk right now. This is how I'm feeling.
Wouldn't you say that? And I think this is kind of what you're saying too, but I know for me, sometimes I feel like, well, I don't want to say anything because I'll take care of this. I can handle this, right? It's just, but when signs start to show, not when the anxiety, when the signs start to show, you got to find somebody to show and tell, right? And so there's no shame, there's no harm in instead of going, because I think sometimes we say, well, I'm going to fix it. And then the longer we try to fix it, the bigger this thing gets. And pretty soon we're just in this battle inside of our brain, and instead of, there's nothing wrong with just saying, oh, I'm just feeling a little anxious today. I mean, right? I mean, I think that's why a lot of people don't, share, because they're like, I'm going to fix this. It's not a big deal. I shouldn't be anxious about anything, but you shouldn't feel bad that you feel anxious. When signs start to show, you got to find somebody to tell.
Yeah. And also, I don't think it's correct to think, well, I don't want to bother anybody with this or with my problems.
That's really good.
I think we need to change our mentality on that.
I agree.
And
why? Why would you say that?
Because a lot of times we think, well, if I share this problem with somebody, it's going to become a burden to them.
I don't want to bring them down.
Yeah, or I don't want to worry them with whatever I'm going through. But
right.
More often than not, I don't think that's true. I don't think that's how people feel when somebody comes to them, and they trust.
How do you feel when somebody comes to you and says, I'm really struggling with fear, anxiety? How does that make you feel?
Well, first of all, it feels good to know that they trust me enough to, and to come and ask me. And I don't get bothered by it. I want to help. I want to help people feel better. And I think that's how most people feel.
Agreed. I think it's honoring when someone asks me to help, I feel better. And so when you're feeling bad and you actually go to someone, more often than not, it's actually going to actually make them feel better, not feel worse that you're going through a difficult thing.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree.
So I have two questions for you. One is, can you give us a sign this week when you went through something like that? Have you gone through something like that just recently? And the second, after that, I want you to answer is, what are some of the signs that show up for you? And I can share some of the signs that show up for me, but let's go to that first question. Was there a time this week when you were feeling a little bit anxious and you actually talked about it? Can you tell us about that? How you got through that? How that helped?
Yeah, so it was a few nights ago. Tim and I were sitting down to watch a movie after the kids went to bed. And, just in the afternoon and the evening, I just been feeling anxious and, just stressed and kind of just over it all, and we were going to continue playing the movie, but I didn't feel right inside. I felt weighed down. And so I just said, Tim, can we pause the
I
movie?
love that, Nana. Can I pause you there for a second? I don't want to keep interrupting, but I
Mhm.
love that. I love you're in the middle of a movie. You're in the middle of doing something with your husband, and you were feeling so angst inside that you actually stopped that movie to say, Tim, can we? Because I do the same thing with my wife sometimes because it's hard to go on with life when you're feeling that way inside. But often, many times we do because we don't want to interrupt, but you can't really enjoy the movie. You can't really enjoy what you're trying to do when all that's feeling inside. How did Tim take that when you stopped him? Was he like, seriously, babe, can we not finish the movie? I mean, what was that like?
Yeah, he was like, I was like, can we talk? He was like, oh yeah, like what's going on? And like it wasn't bothering him at all. Like I think for me to literally like pause a movie and say, like, can we talk about something? Um, I think that just showed him like, oh yeah, like this is important. What's going on? Um, yeah, and I just told him, I just feel very anxious and I just feel like I've been stuck in my head today and in my thoughts, like, just help me to see clearly. And I'm not crazy, am I? Like I had to ask him because sometimes my anxiety, I just get so wrapped up in my thoughts,
Yeah,
which is my
yeah.
anxiety. And I literally feel like I'm going crazy or whatever. And I had to ask him, like, I'm not crazy, am I? And he's like, no. And he said what you said last week. You're not the only one feeling this way. Like this is
Wow.
normal to feel this way. And it's like, okay. Um,
First of all, did that help at all right there? How are you feeling now at that point?
yeah, like I felt like, okay, I'm not insane. I'm not crazy. And I told him one thing I said to him was like, when I feel this way, a fear that I have is what if anxiety takes over like it used to and I go back to the way I was. And he just reassured me like that's not gonna happen. You've come too far. You have all the right tools, you know what to do, and just talking about it, like that's not going to happen. You don't need to be afraid of
And when
that.
he said that, did your attitude flip 180? Did you go from thinking it was going to happen again to knowing it's never going to happen again? I mean, did it flip that
Yeah.
strong for you
And
just by
I
his one sentence?
it,
Yep.
it really did. I felt so much better. I slept fine that night, and then the next day I woke up and it was a good day, and I felt great. Like when I woke up the next day, I felt like I had clarity in my thoughts, and I could see clearly, like because telling somebody like this dark thing I had been feeling and just saying it out loud and telling him, like I said earlier, he was able to shine a light so I could really see the truth.
Yeah.
And so the next day I woke up and it's like, okay, I feel like I can see clearly.
He turned the light on into your dark room inside your head.
Yeah,
That's yeah.
yeah. So I think that was on Thursday that we had talked. And so since then, yeah, even over the weekend, I feel better.
I
I
love it.
feel like I have clarity in my thoughts because anxiety a lot of times can be this dark fog and
Yep.
you
Yep.
can't tell what's right, what's wrong, what's true, what's a lie. It's
Yep.
confusing. So when you show and tell, somebody shines a light on that and it's like
I love it. They flip the light on and
it's
it goes away. The fog goes away.
goes
Yeah.
away, it lifts, and then you can see clearly. And immediately when I talked to him that night, like just even inside, I could feel like I just relaxed and calmed down.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
the anxiety subsided.
Now you're married to an incredible man, and he's an incredible friend too. He's a very good friend of mine. But just not just the fact that it was Tim that you talked to, but how much that had to do with you actually, can I say it, vomiting that out of your mouth, getting that. I mean, you had all that fog that you just, when you spoke, it's like you just spewed all that negativity out of that was trapped inside of you for I don't know how long, minutes, hours, days, whatever, but you spewed it out and he immediately flipped the light on and it was just gone. So my question for you is this. Well, first of all, I asked you how much of that had to do with you just saying it, first of all. Did that have
Yeah.
a large role in the whole?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Okay.
And being able to have enough trust, like I think being comfortable enough with my husband to know that I can pause this movie and tell him how I'm
Yeah.
feeling, and I won't be, pushed aside. So
Yeah. I like how a lot of times we will wait for the right opportunity. I think there's something smart about that. But sometimes, man, when you're struggling with fear or worry, would you say all this stuff happens with fear and worry too, right? And anger, not just anxiety, right? So when we're struggling with that, when we're really angry, but we don't interrupt anything. We say we wait for the right moment to share something. And sometimes it's smart to when you reveal something, but when you're in a safe environment with a safe friend, if you waited for that opportunity to come for you to share, it probably never would have came. I know Tim, you're watching a movie, so it was probably at night. He would have fell asleep before the movie got done. And then you would have went to bed as anxious as before, maybe even more because you're hanging out with your friend. You never shared that with him. So what would have happened, Nena? And so number one, I want to say that I think it's really cool that sometimes we just need to interrupt life and deal with it. Right? Remember, see it, then you stop it. Then you say the opposite, right? And that's what you did. You were feeling it and you stopped it right there. You said, can we just stop this for a second? Can we? And sometimes it's just important to, hey, I don't want to be rude here. Or I don't want to interrupt the conversation, but I am really feeling like this. Can I just get this off my chest for a second? But it needs to be someone that you can trust, right? It needs to be someone that's close. You just don't go to your barista or your, whatever and say that. Let me ask you this question. What would have happened if you didn't open up to Tim? If you didn't interrupt him, you just would have went through business as usual. You started to show the signs, but if you didn't tell, signs started to show, but if you didn't tell, what would have happened, do you think?
well, it was in the evening, so we would have, gone to bed, and I would have gone to bed and taking all this to bed with me, and I know I wouldn't have slept well. I would have laid there feeling anxious, still, my thoughts still going, and then it would have carried on to the next day.
And sometimes I think when it carries on to the next day, if you don't deal with it, it adds on to it, and it brings anxiety, brings all its buddies,
Yeah.
anger, worry, fear. I mean, and they start having a party inside your head, but you stopped everything and you said, hey, can we talk? I love that, Nana. I'm proud of you for doing that.
Thank you. And then also, I think I probably would have become very panicky, because, I was struggling with some thoughts, and yeah, it would just snowball into like a little panic attack, and, and I just realized, man, I don't want to do that again. Like those aren't any fun. And I would rather just deal with this now, nip it in the bud, and just let it, carry on and fester.
I mean, even if sometimes we have to say to the person we're with, can you just tell me it's going to be okay? I mean, tell them what you need to hear. There's nothing wrong with that because it is going to be, you're going to get through it because you're with somebody and we're not alone, right? Mm-hmm. So let me ask you the second question then. So when signs start to show, you find somebody to tell, right? Show and tell. When signs start to show, you find someone to tell, okay? What are some signs that start to show for you? What are some things that start to say, wait a minute, anxiety's trying to creep up on you here. It's trying to sneak up in your rear view mirror. What are some of the signs that you go through that you know that anger or worry or fear or anxiety is trying to get inside of here?
I'll probably feel like a little sad or whatever, depressed.
More than normal? It's not a normal. I mean, you can tell it's a little different than normal, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And so when I start to feel like that, I immediately go back to, okay, what have I been thinking? And I can always trace those back to negative thoughts. And I'm like, okay, we got to change the way we're thinking.
Okay. And
just try to think the opposite, kind of like what we talked about last week. How can I see this in a different light?
Right on. So on your signs are you start to feel a little bit nervous or a little bit, you start having some worries thoughts. You know, one of my signs is when I can't put sentences together. I can't think of typical words to put in a sentence. That usually means I'm tired or I'm worn out or I'm mentally worn out and I'm having a hard time holding a conversation down. That's a sign to me that I need to tell somebody. That's a sign showing that I need to take care of this or something else is going to pop up.
Yeah. And then, another thing that I'll feel is I feel kind of jittery, I guess. And I find myself, I get really busy when I get kind of nervous and anxious, you
So
know.
you just want to, it's like kind of the flight response. You just want to clean something or do something, or you just got to stay, you don't want to focus on what you're thinking. You just want to, like Kramer on Seinfeld, right?
Yeah, I noticed like I keep busy more, and then I can feel it building, and that's part of not stopping. Is I just keep going and going, even though I can kind of feel this thing building up inside. And and I've gotten good at recognizing that, like, okay, stop what you're doing. Like, part of when I get busy, that's part of me trying to cope with how I'm feeling. I want to clean this, do this, get this done. And I notice that's me trying to cope with what I'm feeling or thinking inside. And that's, going back to last week, I got to recognize it. I got to stop it. And so a lot of times I, have to tell myself, okay, stop. You need to go sit down on the couch. You need to take a breather. What is making you so anxious right now? You just need to take a break. Go back to my thoughts. Okay, what have I been thinking? Okay, I've noticed I've been thinking really negatively, and that's probably contributing to how I'm feeling. Or what was I looking at on social media that was making me feel anxious, frustrated? We got to turn that off,
Yeah,
put some music on or something.
that's one of my signs too, is that I get negative, or I get very envious of other people. Instagram turns into enviogram. I start showing attitudes towards people, or I just, I'm trying to live a happy life, but then I'm crabby. I'm anyone that has success around me, I get jealous of it, or what. That's just a sign.
Mm-hmm.
When that signs start to show, you got to find someone to tell, right? At that point. So that's another sign that I go through. I just get more negative than I normally am, or I just get jealous of other people a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I got to recognize when those signs start creeping up, and
Find someone to tell.
Yeah, somebody to tell how I'm feeling, so.
And if there's no one there, then you got to be that person, right? You got to see it, stop it, say the opposite, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of, this episode is a lot like last week's episode. You're exactly right. So it's good for you to be able to encourage yourself. There's even a scripture in the Bible that says to encourage yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
In the Lord, you need to encourage yourself and tell yourself the truth. And I like that in the Lord part. It's in Jesus, because sometimes I have a hard time just encouraging myself in my own strength and energy, right? But I think it's even better if you can, it's important to encourage yourself, but it's also important to find somebody that you can tell. When signs start to show, you have to find somebody to tell.
Anxiety is pretty difficult to try and handle by itself. You just can't. And I tried that for so long, and you just can't.
You can't. And it's not like, well, I can handle this. How often do you say I'm going to handle it and it actually goes away? I mean, that's happened to me a few times, but more often than not, it doesn't go away. It just gets worse. There's nothing wrong with when you see one small sign to just share, hey, I'm feeling a little jittery. Hey, I'm feeling a little jealous. You tell somebody, you say, hey, I just want to share something with you. I'm just feeling kind of a little bit whatever. And sometimes it's okay for you to say, hey, just tell me it's going to be okay. Just tell me to stop being jealous of this person, okay? And we give power. We give power to the light, and it's like flipping on a switch. When you speak the opposite, when you tell somebody, it's like flipping on a switch and darkness goes. All those dark thoughts, all that junk, it just goes away. And I think it's very important to do that these days, because when we don't do it, it just keeps getting more negative. It keeps getting bigger. The fog keeps getting thicker. It's just like the fires out here, the smoke kept getting thicker and thicker. And and the air quality was dangerous to go outside. That's what happens when signs start to show. It's like smoke showing up. And you telling somebody is like turning on, raining out here. I mean, it improved the air quality. If you don't deal with it right away, that smoke just gets thicker, that fog just gets thicker, that darkness just gets darker, that weight just gets heavier. But the moment you share it, even if you have to interrupt what you're doing and say, man, I'm really feeling this way right now. Can I just share something with you? I don't want to bring you down or anything, but I'm really feeling this way right now, and I don't know what to do with it. And you don't even have to know what to do with it. I just want to get this off my chest, if you don't mind. And I'm telling you what, it gets lighter. It gets brighter. The air smells sweeter. The air quality around you is so much better at that moment.
Mm-hmm. And I noticed, like, that night when I told him how I was feeling, and he was able to give me his perspective. We talked about how, like, I felt like that kind of cleared my thoughts up and lifted that heavy fog. So then I noticed the next day, when I felt like those negative emotions, negative thoughts wanted to try and creep back in,
Yeah.
because I had talked to Tim about it and he was able to show me what the truth is, then the next time I started feeling that way again, I was able to catch it and be like, nope, like I know that's not right. Like,
Nice.
you know, so it really does help when you can tell somebody,
Nice.
talk about it.
There's power in those words, because I found myself the other day starting to say something negative, and I caught myself immediately because I was just editing a podcast that I put out about it. And because I spoke those words out loud, my brain wouldn't let me go down that hypocrisy path. And yeah, so, well, thanks, Nena. That's good stuff, man. Anything else you want to say to those that are watching, those that are listening?
Yeah, I think with the world's events, like, we're all experiencing the same thing. Honestly, I've been having a really hard time, and I'm not the only one. You're not the only one.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
hope that
And it's
that
normal. It's normal right
that
now.
can give us all some comfort to know that wherever we live, every place is going through it, and so what I'm trying to do is just to be very patient and just try to take one day at a time, push through, and to remember that this is hard for everybody in their own way. That gives me some comfort to know I'm not the only one.
Good
So,
for you. Good for you, Nena.
yeah.
God, I just ask for all those that are watching, and I don't know if they believe in you or if they don't believe in you, but I just ask that you would help us with this whole anxiety, worry, anger thing. Help us to be a part of the solution, not a part of the problem. Help us to spread a happy-demic, not a pandemic, and just help us to get a handle on this thing. We just need your help, and so help us to show and tell, and not try to fix this thing on our own. You have placed people around us for a purpose, and when you made Adam, the first thing you said was, man, it's not good. Adam's alone. I got to make someone to help him. And God, you've been placing people in our lives to help us ever since. Help us to see that and help us to open up. Remember, hey, when signs start to show, find somebody to tell. Thanks for watching, guys. Try it again.
Happy Last Studio.